All right, so we finally finished Union Raid and exploring the bosses basically. And here, let's talk about the usual guides, team compositions. So, for Dual Ring, this boss is a super straightforward boss because all we kind of just care about is just shooting the core, and there's like nothing really that special. He throws some bombs here and there, and then just a little bit of like shooting, but overall, the boss is like a straightforward boss. For my union, our most used team would be the volume with Tia and Naga and Snow White and Maxwell. So if you guys are kind of like curious what we kind of used for this boss, that's basically what we have used for that. It's a pretty straightforward fight, but if you guys don't have like Snow White or Maxwell invested, you could use like this same team and then Summer Anis and Scarlet. I think that's another common nice combination along with Tia Naga and volume as well because of like crit. And then this universal theme, it's pretty much like you can just use anything or for that, like that almost any boss is applicable except for boss 5, and I'll tell you reason later why this particular universal theme does not work with boss 5. And since the boss is weak against iron, you can start using Soline. Also, Summer Helm is another good choice for this boss. And there's just like, you know, I put in like a lot of different variations to it, but Core Shots is good. So Naga and Tia are really good on that one. And then we have Sinister. So Sinister is a boss that annoyingly sometimes gets above your screen. If you guys are somehow using the 21:9, you might not be able to see the core when the boss is flying upwards. So try to make it 16:9 resolution. That is something that some of my guildmates kind of found for their setup. Some of them said that it's not enough to do this 16:9 in game, but also the monitor. If you're using like a monitor that's like widescreen, it might actually screw you up and you might not end up seeing the core as easily. But otherwise, like this boss is okay. You guys might not like what you're gonna see, but this is basically what our this is basically the team that we really used. So yeah, so obviously that's probably like the easiest, simplest, like no brain cell team, but you know, you can use other teams. Alice and Modernia, obviously they're the best fire, so it's like why not use them? 2B is also a good fire, especially if you have like good fire element. And then if you have 2B, you can start using in volume also, and it can end up becoming like a crit team instead. So if you do that, you could do volume masked, 2B guillotine, and Modernia. So you know, you can save your Alice somewhere else. Like for example, you can put Alice actually in the Naga and Tia combination. So that's another thing that you could do, especially if you, or for example, if you don't have like Snow White invested. That is an exploration that you could do as well, just to kind of save it up. But otherwise, this boss is another pretty straightforward boss. The only downside here is aim assist doesn't really aim at the core, so you want to be active at like shooting the core. You're gonna have to move your mouse a lot and you have to track it. It's not as easy as like just letting aim assist do it. So that's kind of like the boss. You can use Naga, Tia, and again, just in a similar vein, you can just use these kind of units. You can use Alice also and Maxwell, that kind of thing. So that's that. Harvester. So let's get to Harvester in a bit. This Harvester is kind of similar to the Union Raid, so you can like look at the previous videos for Union Raid just to kind of get an idea of like the faces if you really need to. But the main thing about this boss is the QTE face, where it will spawn white QTEs where you can't really shoot at it and it will try to block you. You can pierce through it, but it will try to block your shots. But those white circles are basically the same order of pattern the red circles, the following red circles are gonna be, and you need to just do it in time. And you need to do that red circle face in time, and you just gotta make sure that you have enough burst on that. Now another thing about it is, if you're using either like assault rifle or sniper rifle, you might want to change the way you are targeting the boss. So for example, if you're using sniper rifle, you just gotta shoot around this area and you will get bonus damage. And if you're using assault rifle, for example Scarlet, you can shoot around the middle area for another bonus damage because of that. So you might want to change how you approach depending on the team compositions. And if you guys don't know, that's the range bonus. You get the additional damage range bonus when depending on the unit that you are using in this. So that's one thing, and I guess I'll let this load while I'm explaining other things. So for this boss, you can also do the 2 times on this part. So if you end up somehow like you don't have anything else, maybe you're using Snow White or Maxwell, you can do 2 times on the legs to pad your damage. So here, oops. Now let's talk about here. Let me show you. So if I'm shooting at the bottom here, you see 5-9. And then if I shoot at the top, 4-5. So I'm like dealing less damage. Now for Scarlet, I'm gonna increase my max stacks real quick here. Get her 5 stacks. Okay. See 7-9 at down here. And then if I go at the top, 100. You see? 103. So there's that. You see the difference when you're depending on which position you're shooting, depending on what unit you're using, you'll get more damage. Now here's another thing. You see this circle, this is the order that they're gonna show up. I would recommend having your full burst ready so you know the exact pattern. Oops, actually I just realized I was all in cover. In any case, you get that idea. So that white circle will come up in order, the same order, and the basis is pretty straightforward. After that QTE, there's gonna be some point in time where he's gonna hit the mobs, and you just spawn the mobs and put the shield up, and you just gotta kill the mobs ASAP, and in order to just remove the shield, and then he'll do some bomb phase. But you guys, I'm pretty sure you guys could figure that out, how to deal with those. But otherwise, that's how you kind of min-max the Harvester fight. It's a pretty subtle thing, but it is something to min-max for a lot of you. Now let's look at heavy metal. I posted the different team comps as well here. So it depends on which team comp you have. You could be using Summer Anis with Scarlet, and like Alice with Modernia. And if you guys are wondering like whether you get bonus damage or not, just try to aim at different angles and try to see if you deal more damage if you're shooting at the bottom or shooting from the top. That's just kind of the idea behind it. And here's some different team, like, you know, there's like leftover teams of that. Pretty straightforward fight. There is nothing that is super difficult on Harvester. This is kind of like the Nihilister because it's just a damage punch. There's no additional ways to just gain more damage. It's just you just dump all your hits in here. Now let's talk about heavy metal, because this boss is rather pretty interesting, and I will show you this particular thing. You will see in this clip that, or just this boss, he has like so many different parts, and basically the idea behind it is Snow White is really good at this because you can charge full charge up, and then like if you aim just like on the core, I found it easy to just like aim assist for this one in particular. But if you do that, you can just hit all the parts and the core also for the boss. So it's actually pretty nice. I like it, and this is probably the strongest DPS on this boss using Snow White and Maxwell. I think is probably the strongest one. Here's the caveat, or kind of like the side note for this boss. The moment the battle starts, the boss will cast accuracy debuff. So like using other units like Alice, Modernia will actually make you miss just like if you're trying to aim at like a particular position, it goes off by like 1 inch, like 1 centimeter or something. It makes them miss the core. However, Snow White and Maxwell, their charge burst has like bigger radius, so even if your shot is off while aim assisting, it will typically like raise the core and it will do extra damage on the core. So that's why like using Snow White and Maxwell is actually pretty nice. And then for this clip in particular, he used with Yulha. So if you're using with Yulha, you just gotta time that every 30 seconds burst. So just gotta pay attention to that. And then there's also like if you don't have anything else really, you can use Dorothy. Dorothy has, because the boss will continuously respawn the parts, you can just use Dorothy. And yeah, I think since the parts constantly respawns also, you can alternating between Snow White and Maxwell is one of the better like ideas for this boss. Now let's talk about just the different team compositions, I guess. Like so there's like the solo carry Snow White, or like the duo carry with Snow White, Maxwell, and then you can slap in Yulha, and then you want to time it with Snow White and Yulha, or just additional more damage you can put in Modernia as well with Novel. So yeah, and then you can also use A2 as well. I tried A2. It wasn't the worst thing on this boss. It's actually not super bad. You can use Pepper because the boss is weak against wind, and then there's like a synergy with A2. So it's like a hand in hand. They go hand in hand, and then with Dala, and then just like fill in the gaps. You can use Guilty as well. Guilty was another like useful unit for our guild because not many people can have that unit, so we had a few. So here's the thing, you might see that we ended up using completely different teams in here, and the reason for that is pretty simple. We allocated our Snow White into Blacksmith and Dual Ring, and not everyone has Snow White build and Maxwell build, or well, everyone should have Maxwell build. Anyways, not everyone has Snow White build, so what else would they use? So we just kind of, heavy metal was like the boss where we just kind of dump like other teams. And then we have Blacksmith. And just to talk about Blacksmith, this is where we dumped our Snow White as well for just like additional more damage. And if you're using this team, you want to use Dorothy, because this boss requires to have at least one QTE, or not one QTE, but at least one water for the QTE, because the boss will do this pattern of throwing bombs, he's gonna jump, throwing bombs, he's gonna jump, and then he's gonna use the tentacle afterwards. So just to kind of demonstrate that this is it, I will control Tia. This is probably the most ideal way to do it. And I'm gonna do, let's see here, I want to destroy those parts first and then do a shot at the middle. Once both guns are destroyed, you can destroy the, you can hit the middle and you will hit the core and the body. There's a body part there, so you will notice here that you can, if you shoot at the middle, you'll do double hit, the pierce shot, a core hit and a pierce shot. The core hit, they're both core hits actually, but one of them is a part with core, so Dorothy's will actually buff the damage, and then the other is a normal part, but it's also core. So both are cores, but one is a part, boss part, so Dorothy gets bonus damage there. So that's the kind of idea for Blacksmith. Now, okay, so let's demonstrate this. So he threw bombs and then he jumped, and then he's gonna throw another set of bombs again. Another thing to be wary of, if you're using Dorothy with Tia, if you look back at the Tia VOD, Naga and Tia video that I talked about, there was a Tia bug where Dorothy's burst can be blocked by Tia shield, so just be wary on that one. So this one, yep. So we gotta really shoot fast here. And then he's gonna stun Tia right there. So, and then you wanna swap to Dorothy to deal with the QTE after that. You should have time, even if you're not bursting, I think you should have time for it. But that's the idea behind it. You either want one taunter and then one water, or if you don't have like a taunter, you can do 2 waters instead, so that in the situation that the boss ends up stunning one of the waters, so for example Dorothy plus Privity, you could do that. One will get stunned and then the other can deal with the QTE, and that QTE you need the water to deal with that. So yeah, different team compositions again, just the idea behind it. If you want a consistent run, it would be the taunt plus water or water plus water. That's the more consistent runs. There's alternatives, like for example, if you know that the boss will always like grab the highest HP, which it will, you could actually just use 2B instead, and the tentacle will target the highest HP. So that's another thing to use. And yeah, that's pretty much this boss fight. Blacksmith is like relatively easy, no like one-shot shenanigans that is not consistent, or yeah, right, like the previous Union raids. So yeah, this is actually like a pretty nice Union raid. Like it's not, there's nothing too complicated in it. I think everything, right, this Union raid, I think Tia and Naga just like shines like so much, because you can pretty much use them on all bosses and they're most effective on 4 of them, and they're just not very effective on Harvester. I'd rather recommend you, if you're planning to use Tia Naga, to use them on another boss, unless there's like really, unless you're stuck at Harvester. But yeah, Harvester is pretty much like where I could see a lot of guilds get stuck, because there's no additional core to kind of just get additional damage on. Yeah, I mean, if there's anything else that I figured out, I'm gonna go ahead and like update this Google Sheets as usual, and have a good luck on the rest of the Union raid.